Thank you, John. All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the August 20th, 2024 meeting of the Litchfield Planning Board. Would you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, I will start with the roll call of members. Michael Croto, Chair.
Jared O'Connell, Vice Chair.
Jeremy Robitaille, Secretary.
Travis Tucker, Member.
Okay. I don't see Kim Queenan with us this evening. I thought she was coming to the meeting tonight, but maybe she's running late. First item of business, public input on non-agenda items, items not listed on the agenda for this evening. Anybody have any public input on non-agenda items? Okay. Seeing none, I'll close public input on non-agenda items, and we'll go to number one, Planning Board applicant interview. Is it Letha Riley? Is you here? Letha? Okay, why don't you come forward to the table, Letha, introduce yourself to the board.
I have some resumes. I didn't have the opportunity to drop a resume, and I didn't know if it would be helpful.
Sure.
May I approach?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Just pass it on to you, and you guys can pass it on.
Thank you. Okay. Well, why don't you start, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background.
Sure.
So.
Okay. My name is pronounced Letha, so it's Letha Riley. I've been here in town in Litchfield since 2020, the COVID summer. I moved a short distance away from Londonderry. We were in Londonderry for 14 years. So I live there on Bear Run Drive with my family. My husband and 3 sons who are college age. And let's see. I really love the town. I had wished I had known about it sooner. My only introduction to Litchfield was via Mel's when the kids were little, and we used to come over here from Londonderry. But during the COVID summer, it was actually wonderful because the bike paths were a huge hit. Even though my kids had just gotten driver's licenses, it was wonderful for them to be able to bike up and down across town, which is something you can't really do in Londonderry, frankly, without a parent worrying. So.
Well, it seems like you have a little bit of a background. You were on the planning board for Londonderry?
Yes.
And the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission. Looks like you were an alternate member of that.
Yep.
That's good.
Yep. I served 2 terms on the school board, and the planning board was really where I started. We had moved here from Chicago, and having been away for many years, and I was a stay-at-home parent for about 10, 11 years, and I was getting bored, so I started going to meetings at night and then decided I might as well participate in them. So that's how I started with the planning board. I was first an alternate for, I'm not sure, 2 years, 3 years, can't remember, to be honest, and then a full member, and then yeah.
Great.
So, and I was assigned to the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission, which I really enjoyed. That was, I believe that was once a month, if I recall correctly. And those meetings were really interesting to understand what the neighboring towns were doing, where they were getting funding, trying to understand where DOT prioritizes, gets their funding. So it was a wonderful learning experience, and I actually truly enjoyed it, so much so that when I went back into the workforce, I opted for a more flexible job than my previous employment with internet security and application development. I decided instead to head down the real estate appraisal route. So I'm a commercial appraiser and have been since 2013. I have various affiliations with various groups, but effectively I'm an independent contractor. I do zoning variances from time to time, in addition to typical appraisal work.
Interesting. Okay. Anybody have any questions for the applicant? Okay. So just so you know, we are for Litchfield, the planning board meets the first and third Tuesdays of the month. Our meetings are here in Town Hall typically at 7 p.m. We deal with pretty much the whole gambit, from site plan review to subdivision to master plan to, looking at the zoning ordinances, you name it. So we also work very closely with the Nashua Regional Planning Commission. Jay Minkara is the executive director, and he offers his time to come here as our circuit rider. Essentially, would you be available for those night meetings, do you believe?
Yes, with the exception of September,
Okay.
because I don't have too much lead time in the sense of whether or not you'll approve me. I'm very challenged to clear my calendar in September at the moment.
Okay.
But effectively after that, yes, of course.
Okay.
I can count on one hand how many times I missed a planning board meeting, even as an alternate, for 9 years.
Okay.
So.
Very good. So typically what happens is, with the process, we would, we review obviously the application, we make a recommendation by vote to the Board of Selectmen for you to go before them for approval to become a member of the board. Right now, we are looking for members. We have been desperately looking for members.
Actually,
We have a lot of
that's how I found you. I saw the
turnover.
sign.
Hey, there you go.
There you
So
go.
even just old
All right. It
manual
works.
signage works.
Great.
I thought, okay.
So it would be, a great opportunity. I think, your qualifications, I think you're good.
I do have some references in town to Laura Gandia, who's
Yes.
the chair of the zoning board here
Yeah.
in Litchfield. I used to work pretty closely with her when she was associate town planner. I believe
Okay.
that was her title in Londonderry. And also Terry Briand. For the last several years, I've volunteered at the elections here in town
Okay.
and worked the elections. So.
Great. Okay.
Do you have any questions of me?
And do you
Other than
guys have
what-
any other things you
No,
want
this-
to add?
This history looks fantastic here, so it would be a great addition to our board.
Yeah, you're definitely one of the most qualified candidates we've had in a while, so we appreciate you applying.
Thank you. Well, if you think of anything, feel free
Okay.
to give me a call.
Will do.
So, everybody has an opportunity to review her application and then the resume that she submitted. Is the board amenable to taking a vote to recommending her to go
Absolutely.
before the Board of Selectmen?
Sure.
So what will happen is we'll vote to recommend you to go for the Board of Selectmen at maybe their next meeting, wherever they fit in the agenda. So the town administrator will probably put you on for the agenda for some night when the board is there here in Town Hall. And then you would come before them, and they would basically interview you like we're doing now. This is
Okay.
the same process, it's just you're gonna be with the Board of Selectmen. And they're pretty, I think they're pretty reasonable to deal with, so I think you won't have a problem. Anybody want to entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion to go ahead and recommend Letha Riley to the planning board, and put it in front of the Board of Selectmen.
So recommendation to the Board of Selectmen for approval. I have a motion by Jeremy. Do I have a second?
A second?
Second. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, abstained, motion passes 400. Okay, so we'll definitely, I don't know, Joan, are you going to let
Joan?
Kim know that
Yeah, I
we
can.
road recommendation, and I guess
Extra.
have you put on the next agenda for the Board of
Yeah,
Selectmen?
the Board of Selectmen typically meets the second and fourth, I think, Mondays at 6:30, if I'm
Okay.
correct? Somewhere around there,
Right.
so.
Well, I will do my best to clear my calendar for that, as well as I will try my darndest for September as well to clear that as best I can.
Wonderful.
Okay?
Okay,
So much.
well, thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
All right, have a good night. Right. Next item on the agenda, Rick Charbonneau, update on the Rose Meadow Housing Project, map 2, lot 8, 255 Dairy Road.
Rick Charbonneau, 401 Charles
Good evening.
Bancroft Highway. I'm representing Rose Meadow on through the former BAE site. I'd just like to give you guys an update where we are. We have 48 of the units under construction, they're up and under construction. 2 of the 6-unit buildings are carpeted, so they're pretty well along. We have the water line in, and we're getting our final bacteria test today on the water line. And finally, we got public service to put in a couple telephone poles so we can get power. So we should have power within the next couple weeks. We're hoping to occupy the first units in between the 15th and the end of September. So we're going to start occupying buildings. We're a driveway permit. We have basically a temporary driveway permit. So we can occupy the units that we have under construction with the permit, the driveway permit that they gave us. It's still our intention, if the DOT can get the plan approved, we've been pushing them to get our plan approved. We haven't had much luck, but they have the 60% plans. How that works is you do a 60% plan, you send it to them. They've had it for about 2.5 months. They're telling us we're getting closer in the pile. Once we get the 60% plans, because of all the work that we do with the DOT, they're gonna let us start construction. So at least we'll get that jump on it. We could have the road improvements done on 102 done this year. We don't know. It's 50-50 right now. But definitely by spring, we'll be into that, into the construction of the off-site improvements. Because we plan on going, if things rent well, we're gonna go right into our next phase and build the next 48 units next year.
Okay.
So that's kind of where we are. Everything seems to be going along. If any of you guys want to take a drive-through, you can see it. Retention areas are built, all that stuff. So we're in pretty good shape. We're just putting in the mailbox house now. We have to have one house for the mailboxes for everybody. So right there, natural gas is all in, roads paved. Coming along pretty well.
The driveway looks great,
Yeah.
so, big improvement. So,
Yeah. So, anybody wants to stop by, stop in and.
Which of these units is it on on Ham Court? Is that the first?
Yeah, the first, when you drive in, the first left, when you take that, yeah, I don't remember the names of the roads, but there's 3 units, right? There's 4 units right there. 4 6-unit buildings, and then there's, those are well along the way. All the septic systems are in. We're in pretty good shape there. They just put the shingles on the last unit that got framed. So they'll be a little bit later. They'll probably be done, those buildings will probably be done in December, early December. So that's where we are.
And what about the Hudson side?
We started clearing that today, a couple days ago, so we're clearing that because there's 2 units that go out that way and we gotta put the box culvert in. So we wanna get that in. The box culvert's gonna arrive any day and we're gonna put that in while it's still dry, while everything's dry, so we're not dealing with extra wetland issues or running water, basically. So we want to get that in. That's where we are.
Okay.
So, got
Well,
any
we
questions?
thank you very much for, letting us know, and
Yeah.
we'll definitely, if we have an opportunity, take a drive through.
Yeah, just drive right through. Don't worry about it. You can just drive right through, go see where it is. Don't
That's great.
get any.
Are you finding demand for the units? Obviously.
We haven't even tried.
Haven't even tried.
We haven't even tried. At Calawa Court, we won't, as soon as, if we have, we budgeted 8 turnovers. We've had 5, and there's a waiting list there. So we haven't had any trouble with that. We're staying under the market rate, so, that they're easy to fill up. So we're staying under what that is. So we'll see what happens, but if they rent, we're gonna build more. If they don't, we'll slow down a little.
Wait to see them.
Yep, but that's where we are. Just, more than anything, I wanted you to know where we were with the off-site improvements, because that's the big thing that we have to get done. All right,
Sounds good.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next item on the agenda for this evening is Chick Farm, 30 Charles Bancroft Highway. Conditions of approval on August 6th, clarification. Is the applicant here this evening? Yeah. Why don't you folks come to the table, introduce yourselves to the board.
I'm Jen Brennan with Chick Farm. We're at 30 Charles Bancroft Highway.
And I'm Mike Brennan.
So my understanding is that you folks were here, last meeting. And there was, I guess, some clarification or an issue regarding the notice of decision.
They didn't ask for the clarification. The
Yeah.
town administrator
Okay,
said the planning board pretty much overstepped their bounds.
okay,
The planning board is not the enforcer of traffic. The conditions were return account per event for the first year and review the owner's feedback. After 1 year, annual count. Access to public up to 30 minutes after sunset, or lighting must be deployed. No more than 15 events per year. Probably the 15 events per year, you could say, condition that, but as far as the counting, returning the count for every event and reviewing, that they shouldn't have to do that. If there's a problem, it's a police issue. It's not a planning board enforcement issue. That's what I was
so,
I did not send a notice of decision because this was pretty much up in the air.
sure. I don't know if, Jared, I know you were at the last meeting. Anybody?
we were all
You were all here.
Yeah.
Anything that you guys want to add, or, I mean,
it's-
I wasn't here unfortunately, so.
I advise it to be whatever is in compliance.
Right.
I think everything was well intentioned at the last meeting. I think it was just different group. I think Kim Keenan was a little concerned, particularly about the traffic.
Traffic and then the evening stuff when you start.
Okay.
Yeah, we were trying to help them track what's going on and have us have access, because the police gave a glowing report of the last event.
Yeah.
But, they didn't quite have numbers per se exactly what was there, so just in case things do get out of hand, because that road can get busy.
Yeah.
But if we can't put those stipulations, that's fine if we can't do it.
Yeah.
If it got out of hand, it would be the police going down to enforce.
Well, correct, but then we have a number to work off of. Because right now, if we have no numbers to work off of, we have no idea what out of hand is besides, it's out of hand now, that's it. It's
Well,
whatever it is.
backed up on 3A or.
No, I know, but the police would get there at that point in time. If they don't have numbers, you're just saying it's busy now. So it could have been an accident or who knows what it is. But if there's numbers to track it, you have an idea of what could have caused this backup.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna track going forward anyway, just for our own knowledge. We thought halfway through that last event, we should have got a clicker, because for our own information, it would have been great to know how many cars came through. So that's something we're gonna do, so if you ever do want to know, we'll be happy to give that to you afterwards.
Yeah, we'd appreciate it, but if we can't have it, it's fine to have it go away.
So looks like the motion was to approve the site plan as based on the following amendments. And I'm reading from the minutes from the last meeting. Count all cars entering the event and return the numbers to the board per event after a full year. Report annually on all events. Provide a written account of how the events went and how they impacted the town. So is those two are the ones that are in, that, I guess the town administrator had a concern regarding overreaching?
Well, provide a written account, correct, that one.
That one specifically, or both?
Can't return the account numbers to the planning board.
Okay.
But if they were to count the cars, they're all.
So if we removed, A, what about B, C, and D? Are those gonna be an issue, or no?
Well, the total annual events to 15 is not a problem.
We will not be doing that many events, so.
The lighting,
Yeah, we set that
the lighting
high
is fine.
to make it so that they never have a problem
Yeah.
hitting that number.
Because B sounds similar to A. It says provide a written account, and then you're saying report annually on all events on A. And B is basically providing a written account of how the events went.
So A and B are kind of overstepping.
Okay, so,
Maybe we can just say is it out of place to put a recommendation in the motion, or what?
Jay, any thoughts from your perspective? I know you weren't at the last meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
either.
trying to think about a recommendation. I don't know about a recommendation. One alternative might be, that if there's going to be an account, I mean, you could just eliminate A and B altogether, or you could have them provide it to town staff, which wouldn't be the board reviewing it, but staff would have the record, so that's an option if
Okay.
that's a concern. But it doesn't appear that there was any cap put on the number of.
No, because we don't know, and
participants
they
or
don't know what a cap would be, that's what I'm trying to figure out what a cap could be if an issue occurs.
Yeah, the reason the logic behind this was so that in the event of it starting to get close to a limit, we could have actual numbers for future planning purposes.
And in the events that we're planning, it's kind of cars coming in and out, like it's like a vendor event. So 2 cars might pull in, people get out, walk around, 4 cars might pull out, another car pulls in. So it's kind of a flow for the whole time. It's not like 100 cars pull in and park for 5 hours.
It's not like a concert or a
No.
play or whatever.
No.
It's a living event.
Yeah.
Are there any other businesses in the community that have kind of like one-off events that provide any traffic or
Well,
account,
Knowles,
you know,
Knowles has that on the.
testimonials to
down Christmas
town
trees.
staff?
Yeah.
So, did,
So Knowles, right down the street from them, has the same thing for a
Right.
small part of the year.
and do they submit it to Ken Kleiner? Or?
The numbers I don't believe, but
No,
They don't do numbers.
As I recall, we put a cap.
On this barbecue.
Barbecue,
Barbecue.
parking.
barbecue. Yeah.
We put parking.
But they had issues before about a bunch of dirt and debris getting out on the road that they've now solved.
Right.
But they're already ahead of that game. So
That's where for me, I mean, I definitely see the value in perhaps having them report the numbers to town staff of traffic, but if we don't have anyone else do that in any capacity to anyone in the town, I don't know if that is of, and I think they've shown in good faith
right,
that they care.
That was our thought
about
process.
this traffic concern.
not to create more work, but to have something that we know what's going on because we have no way of knowing otherwise.
Right.
Yeah, or we can just set a recommendation that the applicant keeps track and just keeps the records themselves, which is even simpler.
Yeah.
Should that fly? That'd be okay.
Okay.
Amend to that.
Okay, so
All
does-
voluntary. You guys keep it yourself.
I mean, yeah, I mean, certainly, as I said, my understanding is that this event has happened before in the past?
Well, we came and asked for approval, and we did one event kind of as like a test event, so that the police could drive through. We met with the police department and the fire and everyone. We made sure we had roadways wide enough for ambulances, for fire departments. We had at least 12 volunteers, like directing people, directing traffic, taking care of parking, to making sure that there was no backup on the road. So, and then we were to come back and get the approval to do more and not have to ask permission for every single one.
Do you know how many, I don't know if you know the answer, but do you know how many people came to that one time?
You estimated what, like 2,000 through the whole day? But it's like on and off, it's all day. It started at 9 and went till 3.
How many people did you say?
We guesstimated right around 2,000 cars.
Okay.
that came through. Then that was done by counting it over a certain amount of time and averaging it through the day. So there could have been 1,500, 1,200, you know,
Like I said, we didn't have a clicker, which we realized halfway through the day would have been great knowledge, even just for us to have.
When you learn, yeah.
So-
What's the parking capacity on the site for, at one time? Like how many cars could you
We have
accommodate?
quite a few acres of cleared land in the back that we were lining with cars.
we've got probably between my mother's field and behind her house, which was our overflow, that's about 1.5 acres. And then behind us is about 2.5 acres that we had for parking. So we probably put at any one time 500 cars back there. And we had plenty of room for fire trucks to go through, and I think Joni even drove through at the peak and saw all the cars there. We had a couple of buses there, people bussed in people. And it was, we didn't expect it kind of thing, and we were able to park them all, and we had handicap parking right up close to the event. I think we had, at one point, 20 cars there with stickers on them. So that we're all parked up nice up close. We had a couple of wheelchair vans there. So we were able to park a lot of different things and adapt to what the day did. So.
So do you have to amend this motion?
Well, I think, yeah, we're gonna have to, I think specifically A and B, the cap total amount of events to 15, doesn't sound like there was an issue with that one. The lighting required on site, doesn't sound like there was an issue. Let's see, second part of this, while amending the showroom's business hours. Is there a vote on that? Oh, so it looks like there was a vote also, motion to accept the second part of the request
That
for
was the hours on.
operating hours Sunday and Saturday from 9 to, okay.
On the,
Yeah, there's a separate, there's an entirely separate
I see, okay,
part about the hours.
all right.
This,
Okay.
which is separate from the event.
Got it, okay, so this really, this first motion is really the one that's
Yes.
the bone of contention then, okay. Well, it, you know, Jay, any further thoughts?
No, not offhand, no.
I'll, at this time, and out of fairness, I'll open up to public comment, any members of the public who wish to comment on this application and the issue, the motion. And seeing none, okay, I'm going to close public input on that issue. I'll bring it back. What would the board like to do, I guess is the question.
So, I guess there's a question, should we add any recommendation to the applicant to keep track, or should we just ignore that?
I mean, if it's not, I mean, there's no enforcement mechanism.
Yes.
So, I mean, they can do, if they want to do it, they can do it. If they want to do it, it's not necessarily a condition.
Yeah.
Unless,
I mean, if you're gonna make a recommendation, I'd probably do it outside the motion, because the motion is really, you know, to approve and whatever conditions
right,
Yeah.
you wish to put on it.
so, certainly, I mean, you can strike A and B, keep C and D, and however you want to.
That would make the most sense in this case, I think.
Yeah.
And you two have seen the original one and are happy with the conditions from the original?
I mean, I took my notes when we were here. We didn't get anything except an email saying that we were back on for today, and we weren't exactly sure why. I mean, did call Mike and tell him that there were some amendments that needed to happen, but
So-
we hadn't seen anything yet.
What transpired was, the town administrator, informed us that, I guess she had watched the meeting the last time, and, those requirements asking you to do the reporting, there was a feeling that that was sort of overreaching by us as a planning board. So, the issue has been to look at this, review it again, and, obviously to amend this motion so that, we don't, because that, I think, would be, it's too overreaching for the planning board to get involved in that type of thing, or the reporting stuff. Where you do, and as Joan said, you have the police department. Police department is your safety enforcers. And that's the people that you would look to, pretty much for the enforcement piece. So what we're suggesting is to take those A and B, which were part of the conditions, and I'm just reading this from the minutes. I wasn't here, but apparently A and B speak to the issue of the report. And so what we're suggesting is to remove that. Keep the other conditions, C and D, and everything else that it looks like as part of the other motions that were made regarding the application.
Yeah, so this would be keeping total annual events to 15 and lighting required on site if event goes 30 minutes past sunset.
Yep.
And you're still happy with those two
Yeah,
conditions?
yeah, absolutely. And like I said, we're going to count cars going forward, so even if you take it off and anyone is curious after an event, I'd be happy to share, if you want to call us or shoot an email, whatever.
So the original people that made this motion were Jeremy and Travis, so.
So I saw this on as clarification, so I just assumed the applicants were coming forward and asking for a clarification. This isn't a clarification. This is asking the board to reconsider its vote and change its vote.
Correct.
Which has me a little bit uncomfortable, but,
Well, it's clarifying in the sense that it's clarifying A and B. It wasn't the
Well, yeah, but
applicant's
it's-
request.
it's not clarifying it, it's asking the board to change
To amend the
its
motion.
decision.
Yeah.
And it wasn't agended that way, which makes me uncomfortable. Putting that aside, I think the best way to address it at this juncture would be for first the board to make a motion to reconsider your motion at the last meeting, and then if that passes, then make a new motion.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Okay.
Okay. So, yeah, I think that would make sense. So if you guys want to do that, we can take the vote. I'm probably going to abstain because I wasn't here for the hearing, but you guys were. So, if anyone wants to make a motion, to reconsider, unless you want to further talk about it, I mean, it's up to you guys. What do you want to do? How do
You
you
can do it. I made the motion, so why don't you guys make the.
I'll make the motion to reconsider our decision from the August 6th meeting about this situation.
Okay.
Second.
I will second Travis's motion to reconsider our other recommendation from before.
And just to clarify, that is the motion regarding, well, I'm reading it from the minutes, but A and B.
Yeah, the motion to approve the site plan as is based on the following amendments.
Okay.
Yeah, well, it's a motion to reconsider the whole thing.
It's a reconsider,
Someone
yes.
can then make a motion.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
A new motion.
So, all right, so I guess, yeah, you're gonna have to basically make the motion on the case itself, so.
We just need a vote to reconsider the motion, right?
So I have a motion to reconsider,
Second.
and you have a second. Any further discussion? All right, you take a vote. All of those in favor of the motion to reconsider this case, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, abstained, aye. Motion passes 301. Okay, so that's the motion to reconsider. Now we can go to the motion as specific to this amendment. So, does anyone want to make a motion on that?
Yeah, sure. I will make a motion to amend our decision from the August 6th meeting to strike conditions A and B from the conditions of approval and to amend conditions C and D to be listed as A and B in the conditions.
Specifically for the motion to approve the site plan.
Yes, thank you.
Initial motion. Okay, I have a motion by Travis. Do I have a second?
I'll second Travis's motion.
I have a second by Jeremy. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, Abstained? Aye. Motion passes 301. So that effectively would amend the initial approval of the site plan as to the amendments. So now you're only left with C and D, which is going to be A and B, which is going to basically be the cap total annual events to 15. And lighting is required on site if the event goes 30 minutes past sunset. That's it
Okay.
Okay.
for now.
And will they email us a copy of that, just so I
Yeah.
have it? Okay.
Yeah,
now-
oh yeah,
now that
the
it's-
notice of decision
Welcome.
will go out, and you will get a copy of that certainly. But that's what it's going to read, so.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry to drag you guys back in. Have a good night.
It's all good.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, discussion on amendments to site plan, subdivision regulations, or zoning. I guess I'll turn it over to Jay.
Actually, I think we have two that came from the building inspector,
Yes.
and they should be in your packet. Both of them are relative to ADUs. So one of these would be to, right now, attached ADUs are allowed by right. And what he's suggesting is that attached and detached ADUs both be allowed by right. And secondly, noting that because of a change in House Bill 423, that the minimum, he says maximum square footage, I think it's a minimum square footage, has been increased from 750 to 1,000.
Has that been passed by law, or is that just a bill?
I believe it did pass, but I can double check that.
Okay. Because it says this bill, so I didn't know.
He
if
said this bill changes. I'll double check to see whether it's
Yeah,
passed.
if it's-
But so both of those are his recommendations. We're still early, so we've got opportunities to do workshops, but we are getting into the fall, so it is
Right.
time to start to think
start to
about any zoning amendments that we might want to make for the coming year.
Okay.
And probably look at our tickler file from things we talked about last year and
Right.
decided not to move forward with.
Right.
So, and certainly these could be two bills, two proposals that we consider
Okay.
as well.
Okay, 423, if I'm looking at a reputable source, says October 26, 2023, died on table.
Ah,
Oh, okay.
so it didn't pass.
So, yeah, okay.
Interesting.
Interesting.
So whether you want to consider an increase will be up to you.
Yeah, no, I just was curious about that, but
Statute
also.
now is 750.
750.
Can't go less than that.
So, what does the state bill basically, what does it say? Because we have our own zoning, and what is the state saying,
So,
basically?
right now, by statute, towns have to allow ADUs. They don't have to allow detached, but Litchfield does allow both options. You don't have to allow them by right. You can allow them by special exception or conditional use. That's the community's choice. The choice Litchfield has made is attached by right, detached, come to the planning board for conditional use. So from everything I'm aware of, Litchfield is in compliance with state law. Any changes that you make would be simply a matter of policy. What does the board feel is in the best interest of the community?
Yeah, like, I'm assuming with it being not by right, it's because, like, there were either there may have been concerns about the looks or, like, fitting in with the character.
Yes.
And the question is, should that be left to the building inspector, or should it come to the board?
Yeah, those were, because of course, that was a newer concept. It's going to be a detached structure, so I think that was the concern. And generally, right, I mean, it's the opportunity to have the site plan, kind of see where it fits, what it looks like. So that was the concept then. That doesn't mean that, the board today feels that that's what's prudent. Well, I should say, it's not up to what the board feels. It's up to the board to recommend a change to the zoning ordinance. Needless to say, it's up to the voters as to whether or not they want to
Right.
make that change.
Right.
That House bill, by the way, also seek to increase the number of dwelling, accessory units from 1 to 2 per house.
Yeah,
You could have 2,000 square foot
that was fatal.
accessory dwellings on a house. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big difference right there.
Yes.
Right.
That's multiplication now. That's,
Yeah, we can either not act or we can let the voters decide.
Well, it would be, right now, you don't have to act at all because it's too early. I mean, the soonest you could really post something for public hearing is, I don't know the exact date, but it would be in November. But, so typically, we usually hold the first public hearing in December. Or January, but December's optimal. Your last date is usually the first week in January, and then the last date for the second public hearing, which we always recommend doing, is usually like towards the end of January. I don't have the calendar yet because it's still too early. But usually we like to vote on these in December to give us a little extra time. So we've got time, but we could certainly add these to the list and think about them. And then obviously, one of the values of having the workshops and the public hearings is, getting public input on any of these and
Yeah.
finding them.
Yeah, because I don't know how the town stands on this issue.
Yeah.
Like I can see some people being concerned about, like how some people would use the accessory dwelling units. Definitely, some can be long-term or short-term rentals. There's nothing preventing them from doing that. And there's obviously debate on that, but that's not something we enforce.
Right.
Yeah.
We've had people get variances for larger ADUs in the past. The question is, do we want to increase it to 1,000 or not? Or I don't know.
I think probably what might be valuable is to just kind of look back at, we can probably we haven't had many come to the board. I mean, how many?
well, based on the
Just two or
inspector's,
three, I think.
based on his email, he says he had 3 recently, so.
Yeah, I mean, that have come to the board. We've only had a few since it was adopted, but we could probably look back and see, what applications we received and have a chance to kind of take a look at them. Is it something you feel was valuable for the board to have reviewed or not?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't, there's not much, it would be hard to deny an application because of the character. It would take a lot of, they would have to try to make it outside of our character probably for it to be worth denying. And given that, the board doesn't add a lot of value compared to just having the building inspector review it, in my opinion. So.
I think that might be where I just disagree slightly. I think there is enough, I think, with kind of windows and roofing and exterior about kind of farm. That we are limited, I give you that. But I think there's enough that I do see a value where we're not the only community in the state that does not allow detached ADUs by right. So I think on the argument for, it does streamline the process for applicants and does allow them to get through and maybe build quicker. But also, we've only had maybe 2 or 3 in the past 6 months to a year, so is it really streamlining that much? And I don't even think we've tabled any application. I think we've looked at it, talked about it, and moved forward. So I don't know if that kind of, his sentiment about streamlining it really applies to our community. But I do definitely hear that. On the other side of things, we don't need people putting concrete huts as detached ADUs because,
Right.
the building inspector signed off on it. So I think there's bits to hear from both sides, and it might be useful to continue that conversation.
I certainly think, it's open for.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth it for everybody reviewing the ordinance. I guess to me, the keys would be is that if it's going to be a staff level approval, then it should have, pretty strictly objective criteria. You don't want to defer to staff more subjective, it doesn't fit within the character, because that's really not the kind of decision that staff should be in the position of having to make.
Right.
But certainly, is there an approved septic? Those kinds of things, of course, that would be easy, simple
Yes
to
or no's
verify,
are,
yes
yes
or
or
no.
no's are easy.
Yes or no's are
Yeah.
easy, right.
So if we want to make this a right, then we would need to improve the definition of how it fits in.
Correct.
Yeah, or strike
Yeah.
the language that talks about character.
Which is a pretty big part of some of our town stuff, so.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, you can keep it the way it is.
Yeah.
You can, it's up to the board what you guys want to do.
That's right.
I mean,
And again, you don't have to decide today. You've got time to think about it. I probably makes sense. I think it would make sense for everybody to have a chance to review the ordinance as it's written, and then have a chance to look at some of the applications that we've received.
I also kind of want to take a chance to maybe look at what some other towns
Yeah.
are doing that are similar to us. Maybe we could talk about it at the next meeting.
Sounds good, yes.
okay. Great.
And then, yeah, we probably should think about if there's anything else. Trying to remember from our last year, I know there were a couple we looked at and we didn't move forward with.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's probably more based on our past experience, so. Maybe we can do a workshop. You know, October,
Yeah.
certainly we don't want to get later than October before
No.
we're having workshops.
Right.
September 3rd is completely empty.
It is.
That might be, that would be, if it's completely empty, that would be a
That would
good,
be perfect.
be a good opportunity.
That is our next meeting too, so, yeah.
Well, let's plan then on that for September, if we can, the beginning of September.
And we could also talk about regulatory changes if we want to.
Definitely.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. Anything else, Jay?
No, not yet.
All right, it's to be continued. Number 5, Housing and Population Chapter of the Master Plan. So I'll turn this over to Jay.
So I'm gonna, I don't know if everybody's had a chance to take a look at this draft. I'm going to really breeze through this. I'm not gonna walk everybody through it. You may recall, we reviewed this a couple of months ago. With very, very few exceptions, all the data that you saw previously is the data that's in this chapter. I think there's 1 or 2 changes to that, which I will talk about. So unless you want me to go page by page, I'm not. I'm just going to probably hit on a couple of highlights. First of all, I added pictures, as you can see. Pictures are always nice. I made a lot of, I made some edits to grammatical things, typo things, so those you saw. Few minor changes in language. Just kind of hitting on some of the key themes, which I think we talked about before, and I think the board appreciates. Litchfield went through a period of tremendous growth, and that really continued for several decades. Until, as you can see here, just kind of zooming down the historic, it's actually pretty shocking how small Litchfield's population was. Up until really 1970. I mean, you're talking in the hundreds, which is pretty astonishing. And as you may know, pretty much everybody lived on 3A, almost the entire town. So at any rate, obviously the town saw exponential growth, and that growth really has slowed, and for a period there, it was virtually non-existent. Litchfield went from one of the highest rates of growth to one of the lowest. So that was kind of the theme. Perhaps that is changing. I had a couple things flagged I was going to zoom to. There are a couple of little anomalies that I thought are interesting, worth chatting. Maybe just, I don't even know what I would say they mean, but one of the odd things in Litchfield is, unlike the vast majority of communities, population growth in Litchfield in recent years has been entirely by natural increase. If it weren't for natural increase, Litchfield would have lost population. Yeah. You've got more outmigration than children born, which is really bizarre for most communities. Maybe related to that, Litchfield also has a higher percentage of people in the 0 to 19 age group than the region, than the state, than the county. Although you also have a higher percentage, slightly, of 65 and older.
We had a higher median average age, I believe, in town than most of them.
Yeah, so you've got more people 65 plus, and you've got more people 0 to 19. It's kind of interesting. What implications that has for anything, I don't really know, but I thought that was interesting. And your household size is slightly larger, which again, that's probably not too terribly surprising.
if you've got more kids. Incomes, we talked about this, but, median household income in Litchfield is fairly high. And this is as of 2020. I'm sure it's higher now, about just over 112,000. That makes you fifth highest in the region. So not astonishing, but definitely fairly high. No surprise. Well, I shouldn't say that, no surprise. I actually thought this was surprising that the largest single group, over 31%, almost 32% of households earn 150,000 a year or more. That was higher than I expected. Nevertheless, those are the kinds of themes, not surprising. I don't even necessarily need to zoom into this, but for a 4-person household in Litchfield, a low income is considered about 97,000 a year. I thought that was pretty astonishing, actually. I'm not going to go through a lot of the data that we already talked about until we get to here. So this chart that you see here is the number of building permits issued in every year. And as you can see, again, that's just kind of showing visually the population growth slowed. Well, obviously it did, because the rate of housing production slowed so significantly. You really saw a drop-off in the recession, the Great Recession, and it never really recovered. That's a story true throughout this region, but it never really recovered. What you do see on the very end there, this was one of the data points I did add, the 2023 building permits issued. You are seeing an upswing. You've seen upswings before, and then it falls the following year, so you can't know whether that's a trend. But it could be, and I'll come back to that theme later, it could be given kind of what's left to be developed. And let me see, I'll zoom down to nice little pictures of everybody. I like pictures. I didn't find any good people pictures. So this, again, I think we touched on this before, but it's just worth noting a couple of these themes that we see. Rents, of course, are up everywhere. I think we heard earlier. I was kind of struck with the Rose Meadows update that Mr. Charbonneau is expecting occupancy in mid to late September and is not advertising. Perhaps that's an indication, but if you are just looking at table 218, and I realize anybody looking at that screen isn't going to be able to see it, so sorry. Just note the vacancy rate for the rental vacancy rate in Litchfield in 2022 and 2023 is 0. And I guess that means basically apartments don't even, somebody's waiting, obviously. You've got a waiting list, right? So the turnover is immediate. Indication, needless to say, of a really strained market. Moving on down, next thing I wanted to really hit on was population projections. I'm not going to go through all the housing. You've seen these charts before, they didn't change. This is kind of where you put the affordability flag for owner and renter. Moving on down to population projections. So the population projections that you see here came from the Office of Planning and Development. So they did this statewide. So this is something I'm going to touch on a little bit later, but you can see the 2020 population for Litchfield, 8,475, so just under 8,500 people. They project by 2030 it would be, well, it's more specific than I would make in a projection, but I understand why, 9,919, so an increase of over 500 people, 550 people. And then, 94, 26 in 2040. They go on to 2050. I would never go to 2050. Even 2040 is pushing it. But nevertheless, it's just something I'm going to touch on a little bit again as we get down to the next section. So again, you've got the population projections graphically. So this is kind of, to me, this is kind of the crux of it. Overall, just in kind of looking at the housing opportunities that Litchfield provides really are pretty varied. You've got the multifamily housing overlay. You actually are one of the few communities without water and sewer that does have workforce, project-based workforce housing. Not a lot, 30 units, but you do. And you do provide
opportunities for manufactured housing. Granted, the last expansion we saw had to be by variance. That's something to think about, but and generally there is an allowance for, overwhelmingly this is a town of single-family homes, but provisions have been made to allow for more diversity of housing types. The other thing that kind of jumps out at me is when I look at these population projections, well, there's one more thing I guess I'll touch on before I get there. So you can't really see this, but if you look at this, so all the regional planning commissions in the state updated their regional housing needs assessments in '23. And as a part of that process, all of us did we didn't call it that, we called it housing development targets, but in essence, it's a fair share analysis. And what that did was look at how many units every community would need to produce, both owner-occupied and renter-occupied, and based on the workforce housing categories as well, of rental housing for 60% of the median, and home ownership housing that was affordable. So what kind of jumps out at me is that Litchfield really is surprisingly on track to get there. So right now, as of the time that we wrote this, Litchfield, right now you've got about 350 plus units that are approved or under construction. Obviously, Rose Meadows is a really significant chunk of that. And, but we've got, and again, Olson's hasn't happened yet, but Olson's was approved at 55. You've got Tallarico. We've got the horse farm, being redeveloped as well. So you've really got a pretty significant number of units in the hopper. From what I can see, that means that you're really on track to meet that target for 2030. And you need 540 some units to meet the 2040 housing production target. The likelihood of, I think, Litchfield getting there, again, the world can change. Developments can go away. We know that, right? I mean, we know all these things. But right now, I think the trajectory that the town is on is towards actually meeting those targets. And in terms of total production, if that were to happen, my estimate is you would see an increase of about 900 people between 2020 and 2030, and let's say up to 1,300 total increase between 2020 and 2040. So I kind of look at that, and I think that's also consistent roughly with the population projections from the Office of Planning and Development, making it, in my view, pretty likely that that is the population that you could be planning for. We then looked at what the prior build-out analysis suggested, and that was, depending on the development scenario, roughly between 10 and 11,000 people at build-out under Litchfield's current zoning, assuming that all of the vacant developable land is built. So that certainly might not happen. More land can get added to conservation. Land that's in farming can stay in farming. So there, will that ultimate build-out happen? Probably not. So more or less, that's kind of a way of saying, I think, planning for over the next 10 years, another 1,000 people for Litchfield is probably reasonable. In terms of overall recommendations, I didn't really include them in here, but I think a couple of things to think about is whether or not the town does want to expand opportunities for multifamily housing development. We've had suggestions before. Do we look at expanding those opportunities in the northern commercial zone? Is that something we want to do or not? Vacant developable land within the existing multifamily overlay is limited. So is that something the town wants to consider? And do you want to provide more opportunities by right for the expansion of existing mobile home parks? There was a statutory change on that. It's kind of vague, but those are things that you might consider. There's a lot of things to consider. So end of the day, I think in terms of total housing production, the town is absolutely on track. And it's probably not surprising that most of the units that are now approved and or under construction are multifamily, they're not single-family. And that is probably going to continue to be true for the next few years. Also, although I made a note of the total number of building permits increasing, is that a trend or not? Realistically, it's at least a short-term trend, just given the fact that we were issuing fewer than 10 permits per year, and we've already heard this evening, of constructing over 40 at just one development. Realistically, we are absolutely going to see that total number of units, the number of permits issued, increase significantly over the next few years. So I think that's an inevitable trend. The real challenge, not surprisingly, isn't going to be meeting the total production targets. It's going to be how does the town in some way enable a larger percentage of those to be consistent with the state's workforce housing definitions. How can a percentage of those ownership units be affordable to, under the state's definition, a family of four earning 100% of the median income? And how can we develop more rental housing that's affordable to families earning 60% of the median income? That's the real, I think, challenge. So what this chapter doesn't say this is what you should do. What it does do is provide a range of alternatives that the town could consider. And then, some of them are not up to you. In other words, a developer who is proposing multifamily housing in Litchfield could have opted to seek low-income housing tax credits, or could have applied under the state's Invest New Hampshire program. They didn't, but they could have done that. That's happened in other communities. So a lot of that is really a developer choice. Do they want to go that route or not? Could the town incentivize it? Probably, in some way. Would that be effective? Those are all things to consider. So there's a whole list of alternatives there as well. So that's what we've got. And I don't know if anybody has questions or thoughts or edits or changes, but.
Anybody have any questions?
First off, thank you for your hard work on this. It looks really phenomenal.
Excellent.
Yeah, I agree that it would probably take a significant devaluing of the greater Boston area to stop this trend, because the values are really high right now. It's very unaffordable.
I think it's absolutely right. Well, I mean, who knows? I think you probably, both of you guys are probably aware, we did see a slight moderating of the increases and a slight increase in availability, but everything is so tight.
Yeah, and that's going to change in about 2 weeks when the Fed drops the rates. So prices are going up really soon.
Inside information.
That's probably true.
It is wildly true. So you thought it was bad before, it's going to be worse. So.
I'm sure you could probably answer this question in a myriad of ways, but just to think about, are you familiar with any kind of incentives communities in the region or the area have put in place to kind of encourage affordable development?
What I've typically seen is a density bonus. That's the most common. Some communities choose to do things like waive impact fees, which is not always popular, but that's something some communities do. But the density bonus is usually the biggest incentive. Some communities, and it is arguable as to whether you can do this under New Hampshire law, but some have adopted, there's at least a couple, including one in the region, that has adopted an inclusionary housing ordinance. So that's requiring an affordability component within projects of a certain size.
Okay.
So Nashua has done that.
How much density do you think we can support without a sewer system?
So that's something we'd have to look at a little bit further. For a community without sewer, Litchfield's density is fairly generous right now. So I think that's something to look at. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, could you really accommodate, how much more could you accommodate realistically with community systems, but that's worth investigating.
The higher density also might lead to higher building heights, which would impact fire. So,
Yeah, and, some of the sites, I guess, a lot of it, I guess, depends on the site. Some of the sites I've looked at, you probably could fit some more density. Some of them, given other constraints, like easements,
Yeah.
and, drainage and access and buffer, it kind of gets a little bit, it would be difficult to put in too much more, but I think it's absolutely worth looking at, and it's probably worth looking at what some of the DES, the starting point would be, what are the DES requirements? And then from there, how far could we go?
And then there's the question of where would people be okay with higher density, because people don't like additional density when they live in a low density area. But without additional density, the affordability does not improve.
correct.
All of the senior housing had density bonus.
Yeah, it did.
Remember what it was?
Yeah, because that was incentivized. I think those are all single family. Yeah, those are all single. So it's definitely worth taking a look at. The density in the mobile home, well, in Olson's was also pretty significant. Those were 10,000 square foot lots.
Right.
And that is an ownership, or at least you could say hybrid. You own your unit, you
Yeah,
rent your lot, so
yeah.
where does that fall? But that is considered now to be, de facto workforce housing. So it doesn't neatly fall in, but it's considered workforce housing. So that's a plus. But yeah, these are things that I think are worth exploring.
Would we get information from the Economic Development Committee on this? Because I know there's the upcoming meetup.
Yeah, most of we'd give you from that would be just opinion-based town results. So take that with a grain of salt, I guess.
Yeah, it's those who are willing to come.
True.
Realistically, for rental housing that's going to be affordable to a family earning 60% of the median income or less, density bonuses alone aren't going to get you there. You're going to need you're going to need tax credits, you're going to need some other level of subsidy into that project to get there. It's just...
Yeah, the land development cost is too high.
Everything is just so high, so I'm not aware of an inclusionary ordinance you can get there, potentially, because if it's 10% of the units or 15% of the units that are set aside, then, and you're giving a density bonus, then you can get some of those units. So, in a Rose Meadow, you might get 17 to 20 something, depending on the math, which is not nothing. That's not insignificant. But that would probably be the way you'd have to go. It wouldn't be a whole project. I don't think you could get your density bonus significant enough to get a whole project affordable.
Yeah.
But again, unless somebody wanted to get tax credits or something along those lines. And if there's an incentive, they might be willing to do that.
There's a comment on the manufactured stuff. Whenever the property owner owns the property but not the actual land, it doesn't fall under typical letting guidelines. So it's much more harder to sell those homes in the open market. So just keep that in mind.
Right, it is.
So rates are higher, terms are different. It's much more challenging.
Right. And 2 of ours are co-ops.
Yeah.
So, if we think it's ready, then our next step would be to send it to public hearing.
I think this is great, Jay.
Yeah.
I guess what is the will of the board? Did you want to send a public hearing, or review it, or what?
I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is just to adopt the section of the, what's it
Right.
called?
Jay's updates.
It's the master plan.
Master plan, yeah.
Right. Your vote wouldn't be to adopt tonight, it'd just be to send it to public hearing.
Just to send it to public hearing.
And then
Yeah.
after that, you could choose to adopt it, make changes, defer it, or adopt
Do
it.
we have enough time for the next meeting to be public hearing?
Do we have enough time for the third? I
Let's see,
think we do.
I think so.
31, so. Like, yeah, just barely 2 weeks.
Yeah, we'd have to have the, well, is it pretty much in the form that?
Yeah, it's
that you
totally
want?
ready.
Then, yeah, we could post it the 22nd.
So yes, we could do it.
Okay.
So, I guess I'll
Make a
make
motion.
I'll make a motion to bring the draft of our population housing master plan chapter to public hearing for the September
Third.
3rd meeting.
Okay. I have a motion by Jared. Do I have a second?
I'll second Jared's motion to bring this to town meeting.
Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor of the motion to bring this to public hearing, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, abstained, motion passes 4-0-0. Okay, very good. Great. Thank you, Jay. Great job. Appreciate it. Okay. Moving on. Committee reports. Any reports from any committees? Jeremy, do you have anything for economic development?
I do not. I was not at the meeting a few weeks ago. Were you there, Jay, by chance?
I was, yeah, no, it was a good meeting. I think the board is aware that there's going to be the focus group sessions that are coming up. So that was really the main talk and the planning around the logistics of that. So I don't have all the info in front of me, but if I am correct, the closing date for signing up is next Monday. I believe. And let me double get onto my calendar somehow. I may, yeah, I know everybody's looking at my calendar now. Yeah, so the cutoff is the 26th, so if you're interested and you haven't signed up, please do. You can sign up on the town's website. It's going to be at the high school. Hopefully we will have, refreshments as well. So it's planned on around a 2-hour session. So we spent a lot of time kind of talking through the logistics of how it's going to work. And we do have committee members volunteering to facilitate. So I think it's really shaping up to be a good event. And the next meeting of the committee is the 28th. So that's really when we're going to make our kind of final plans around, we'll know the numbers, which allows us to kind of really plan. But the format's going to be, your fairly typical kind of brainstorming session. Everybody breaks out into smaller groups. We'll all be in the same larger room. Each group will have a facilitator and a scribe, and they'll be, reporting back out to the group, going back into your group, reporting back out to the big group.
We should have maps on site.
We'll have maps on site. We'll do an overview of the survey. That was a really excellent, comprehensive survey that was done. So the idea really is to dive deeper into the key topics that came out of the survey, such as what does economic development mean to you? When you hear that term, that we know that it means different things to different people. So it's those kinds of things. It's really being able to dive deep. So I think it's going to be good.
Thank you, Jay.
Great, thank you. I did not attend the Conservation Commission meeting in August. I was on vacation. The Capital Improvement Committee met last week, last Wednesday. And we heard from the police department regarding proposal to build a new building. We also heard from the road agent regarding his requests for, the roads, and also talk a little bit about MS4. So you heard a little bit about that and how crucial that's going to be as we move forward. We're going to next meeting is going to be recreation, and the library, I think, is coming to discuss their proposals. So that's all we have right now for capital improvement. The Lower Merrimack Local River Advisory Committee, I've not heard anything about any meetings recently. So that's about it that I have. NRPC, obviously, when is the next meeting, Jay? Is it?
Just make sure I don't say the date wrong. It's September 18th.
September 18th. So that would be the commission meeting. And that's all I have. No one here is on energy, right? So,
No.
No. So, okay. The approval of the August 6, 2024 minutes. Dave, had an opportunity to take a look at those. Have any questions? Any changes you'd like to make? And if you want, you can certainly approve them. I wasn't here, but I'll have to abstain, but those who are here.
Did you two have a chance to review them?
A little bit, yeah.
I didn't see anything at
yeah.
first glance.
I didn't see anything.
Okay,
wrong.
so if you guys want to approve them, you're welcome to approve them. You can entertain a motion to do so.
So,
I'll make a motion to approve the August 6th, 2024 minutes.
Okay, I have a motion by Travis. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Jared. Any further discussion? All right, all those are for the approval of the August 6, 2024 minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Abstained? Aye. Motion passes 3-0-1. Thank you. Any other business? Joan, do you have anything this evening?
No, I do not.
Oh, Jay, do you have anything?
I do not.
Anybody have anything?
I guess, are there any updates on the stormwater regulations?
No, not that I've heard.
Because we wanted to,
Yeah.
do you know when the deadline or the date that we submit the annual report? Because if there's discussion stating that we were gonna approve what we had and then improve
Whatever
it
changes, yeah. I think
before we
yeah.
submitted the report. So when,
I'm not sure. We'll have to check with Kim on that.
Yeah.
I don't remember saying we were going to change it, we were going to make changes before. I forgot how that was worded. We'll
Yeah.
look into that and get back to the board.
Because I know the consultant was going to be working on it, and
Yes.
I think was going to get back to us, so.
What
but-
we submitted to EPA within the time frame, though,
Right.
was compliant.
Was compliant.
So
Right.
these were additional changes that we
Right.
contemplated for our portion.
yeah, we concluded that the follow-up requirements were burdensome for many types of projects.
Yes, and that was really do we reconsider the requirements for between 15,000 and 1 acre?
But also for just any project that just happens to be a large size that, like the requirements for reporting going forward, like you have to hire someone and all of that stuff and have a report annually sent, that's a big ask for certain projects, so. Yeah, hopefully we can get the feedback from the consultant in lieu, and hopefully you will also have a chance to.
And that's really what we need, because we need to make sure that we can make them less burdensome and still compliant.
Well, that's it, yeah.
Because, yeah, according to the consultants, the follow-up requirements were a little less strict according to the permit.
Yeah, I
So,
think that's right.
like, what we have is basically the template recommendation on, yeah, submit this report, it'll definitely be sufficient, but that's a big ask for many,
Big ask.
for smaller developments that are an acre in size.
Well, we'll certainly revisit that.
Yes, and those will be regulatory changes, not zoning, so we can handle those at the board level.
Yep. And any updates on the land that was reserved for the bridge at the southern end of town?
Not that I have heard.
I haven't heard
I mean, that's gonna be, that's gonna take some time. Ultimately, for that to get released in some way, DOT's first gonna have to go through the process of declaring it surplus. And then, once they've declared the surplus, that in itself is a process, as I understand it. It's first offered to other state agencies, then it's offered to the town, and then if there are no takers there, you know, they can take it out to the private market in more than one way. But I expect it's gonna be some time before that resolves itself. And probably, if there's really an interest in, you know, requesting, you know, that they go through that process, that could make it go faster.
My understanding is that the Board of Selectmen has asked Town Council to reach out to the state, so, to look into that, so. We'll see what happens.
I guess, yeah, and a different topic, I've definitely seen some complaints online about people running stop signs on Albuquerque.
Enforcement issue.
Yeah. Yeah, is there anything from a design standpoint that we can plan for? The main complaints was the Century Albuquerque intersection and the Pinecrest Albuquerque intersections.
So we did have we asked the engineering firm VHB to do an analysis of Albuquerque a couple of years ago. And it was mainly to look at pedestrian safety improvements, but one of those stop signs, the one at Pinecrest, I think was the one that came up. As I recall, they did make some suggestions as to improve that. We can get that back out to the board. It was never, their recommendations were never acted on. But it's probably something worth reviving because a fair amount of effort went into that.
Yeah, I think we talked a lot about traffic calming.
A lot of it was based on traffic calming.
Yeah.
And a lot of the recommendations were about narrowing
Yeah.
the travel lanes and without reducing the pavement, but widening the shoulders and narrowing the lanes. And then there were recommendations for where we could put crosswalks and what those would look like. And really, that would be a great project to try to get funding to implement.
Yeah.
But it's been a while, so it's probably worth, if we're gonna do a workshop, it's probably worth bringing that study back up and, you know, getting it out to everybody so they have a chance to review it, because I thought there were really good recommendations.
Do you think it would ever be possible to potentially like put a roundabout or something at that intersection if the slope allows it? Because when people see an island in front of them, they know, oh, there's not road there, I need to slow down. Whereas it's just a stop sign, some people just have tunnel vision and ignore it.
Yeah, that might be a tough spot though. There's a lot of elevation change left to right over there. So
Yeah.
That's certainly an engineering question.
Yeah.
You know, could you do it? I'm not sure.
Yep. Then there's the question of maybe getting funding for a flashing stop sign, at least on the downhill side, because the momentum carries you and you have to slow down and notice there's an intersection there. And drivers have been questionable lately.
If you've been over to Pelham, you've noticed you probably have seen the 2 roundabouts that they have near their town hall in their center of town. And they have funding for additional roundabouts as well.
Oh, nice.
So
Yeah.
another one's gonna go at Sherburne Road and Mammoth Road.
Nice. Yeah, and the single lane ones are definitely less overwhelming for people. The 2-lane ones, Litchfield will never really need a 2-lane one unless someone decides to put it on.
I would hope not.
Yeah, yeah.
Be a change in town.
Yeah, I think, yeah, people are, I'm sure, much more willing to have a single lane roundabout. Some people, I paid attention to them implementing a roundabout on the intersection of Babusick Lake Road and Turkey Hill Road in Merrimack.
Yes, that's right.
And I like that roundabout right there because I've driven by it, and it's one of those intersections where you naturally have momentum and you want to just keep it, so people will just turn left on to take a left, crossing the other line of other direction of traffic when it may not be the safest time to do so. And the new intersection with the roundabout slows you down. You only have to worry about the cars that are just in the circle.
Right.
It's a huge safety improvement.
And I'd say like Pelham, if I recall correctly, that was 80% state funded. And it was originally not going to be a roundabout. It was going to be intersection improvements, but they reconsidered it and changed the design to a roundabout.
Yeah. One of the complaints that I saw on some roundabout projects is that it would make people who don't like roundabouts go different ways. But in this town, there are often not convenient alternative routes.
Right.
So if it is discouraging people from driving there, then that's a good thing because you're not driving through that part of the neighborhood anymore. Yeah, and another intersection that it would be interesting to see if the traffic count's justified is the one for, I think, Nessingkeg and Albuquerque, because like there have been some complaints about that. And if you can get in a roundabout there, it'll naturally calm down traffic because you got
Yeah,
hit
fine, if you were to go.
in either direction. You're not going to just speed from intersection to intersection when you know it's just right there.
Right. The key, I think, in making them work successfully is the geometry's got to be right.
Yeah. A well-designed one is
Yeah.
very helpful.
If it's not large enough, then you've got the risk of the side street people never getting in. Harder to get in because you've got the
Dairy
dominant.
traffic circle?
No, yeah,
Like 5 streets coming in.
yeah, 101,
But the dairy one, yeah, that is not designed well.
Yeah, 102 and
at
28
all.
was not a
That
good
is
idea to
like
put
an
that there.
example of the worst design ever. It does everything wrong.
One downside I do have, because I have larger trailers that I have a camper, so single lane roundabouts that are relatively tight are a challenge. Not to curb wheels, takeout signs. We don't have a whole lot of commercial driving in that part of town here, but
Yeah.
there are plenty of campers and boats and other stuff that there may be some property damage if we do a lot of roundabouts.
A well-designed one will have a section, a smaller circle outside of the inner circle that you can drive on, but it has a tiny curb that discourages people from driving over it. So a semi or someone with a trailer can
Yeah, that'd be
have the trailer go onto the center higher area without causing any property damage.
The Mass Visa traffic circle is probably one of the better ones because it has a large center area. It seems to flow very well.
We do have a very wide right of way.
Yeah, because we have the entire area from one side of the street past the bike path, or multi-use path.
And I can't say the VHP study didn't look at a roundabout.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I would love to get some traffic data on that, because it would definitely be great for traffic calming, keeping it flowing, so you don't have to stop unnecessarily. People don't stop when they should.
One thing I forgot was the land use books. Could you hold that book up? The new ones are available. Would like a hard copy?
I usually request one.
I should probably plan on filling the board,
4 or 5.
just in case.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, anything else?
I guess now that we have one new applicant, do we have any additional slots for members?
Yes.
So we have, how many? So we have.
You can have 7
Right.
alternates.
So we'll have one more vacancy for a full member, and then it really is optimal to
Have some
Yeah.
have some alternates.
Yeah. Yes. So yeah, we still need applicants.
Again,
Do we still
right.
have two vacancies, or am my addition incorrect?
Including the vacancy that, is hopefully going to fill. It's 2.
Okay, yeah.
Right.
Like there's 4, and then her, and then we still
Right.
have two positions to fill, correct?
Yeah, so,
Well, selectmen.
right now, we
Oh,
have,
they count as that, okay.
yeah,
All
right
don't
now,
worry
we
about it.
have
Thank you.
5.
Yeah.
If you join the board,
Yeah.
we'll have 6. That'll still leave us with 1 vacancy for a full member.
And
And we
then
have no alternates. So
Alternates is a thing too, yeah,
definitely be helpful to have some alternates too.
it's always something.
absolutely. Yeah.
And if someone's concerned about not being able to attend every meeting, obviously,
Right.
like, the requirements are a little lighter for an alternate.
And as we've obviously seen historically, alternates often become full members when the
Yeah.
opportunity arises. So,
It does. Mhm.
and that's just really great to
Yeah.
have that.
Absolutely. Okay. So, as you know, out there in television land, if anyone is interested in becoming a planning board member, please stop by Town Hall, pick up an application or download an application on the website and send it in. So we encourage everyone to step up if they so doing, so.
I guess lastly, when should we plan on reviewing the zoning laws for like subdivisions and stuff like that? Because
Well, I think we're gonna have a workshop on the 3rd.
We're gonna, yeah.
so should we review those sections and bring up potential changes?
For zoning
Um,
or regulatory?
Or site plan, are you talking about?
like site plans and
Subdivision?
yeah, subdivision.
Yeah, I mean, I think the workshop's an opportunity to start having those conversations.
Yeah. Definitely.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Seeing we have no other business this evening, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
I will second your motion to adjourn.
Okay, I have a motion second. All those in favor? Say
Aye.
Those opposed? Abstained? Motion passes 400. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. We will see you on September 3rd, and have a great rest of the summer. Thank you.
And we hope you're still.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
See you soon.